morning. Good morning, all. Thank you for being here. Today, I have the honor to have this panel with these fantastic guys speaking in a subject that is I think is the main trend in this moment, AI. And I think I never had a panel so beautiful as this one to speak about AI. Okay, I will not present you the curriculum of each one because you have it in the agenda. We have Vanyl-Robin, CEO and founder of Plastics, and that has a great phrase that I like very much. Everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to pay for it. I think it's a great thing, Andre. Then we have Ricardo. Ricardo, quite young, as you can see, but he is already the founder of the second company working and researching about AI, and he will explain a little bit about it, mainly in the retail and so on. And then we have Greg Sherwin, that works on the human-centered technology and works in Farfetch, a great Portuguese startup, as I know, and that I like very much. And we knew that we are neighbors in the work. Then, the challenge that I'm launching to them is to speak a little bit about their experience in AI, what they are doing in AI, and you see that are complete different things. And then we go on with some discussion about this subject. We can begin with you, Andre. What you do, why you do it.
Thank you very much, João, and thank you everyone for being here and for inviting us. My name's Andre Vanyl-Robin, and the initial reason I founded Plastics was because there was a question. What can we do as citizens, ordinary citizens, to help fight climate change, help recover plastic in the environment? And the answer to that question was ultimately, well, we consume. There's nothing much more we do, whether voluntarily or involuntarily. And so who's responsible for the products and the services that are put into the market? Well, companies are. And so as consumers, the power we have of choice is choosing the products and services from companies that have demonstrated verifiably that they're doing something for the environment. And so from that point, we wanted to tackle the 350 million metric ton problem, which is 350 million metric tons of plastic being recovered, being produced every year, and only 9% being recovered. And who are we, and why do we want to do this? Well, our vision essentially is to include plastic recovery in every economic transaction. Every product sold in the market must entail plastic recovery. And how do we do this? Across 17 countries, we are tracking the recovery of plastics on the blockchain. And this tracking is essentially the waste management industry. When they're collecting the waste, they're sorting it, and they're selling it to the recyclers. This sale takes place with a document that has been used by all of us for thousands of years, the invoice. They are selling a waste to a recovery that they recovered to a recycler, and they are issuing an invoice. This invoice has a number, this invoice has a date, this invoice has a type of plastic, this invoice has a quantity of plastic, this invoice has a destination, and along with this invoice, you have the bill of lading, the receipt of the shipment. All of this information is converted in a digital certificate, which from our technical point of view is an NFT, and this digital certificate essentially says X amount and Y type of plastic has been recovered and delivered to the recycling industry. Well, these certificates are called plastic credits. And these plastic credits are sold on our plastics marketplace, where companies buy them essentially for two reasons. They buy them because they use, produce, or distribute plastic. And by buying this plastic credit, they're essentially saying what we use, produce, and distribute is being recovered. And the second and the most important reason is from a corporate social responsibility exercise. By buying these plastic credits, they're saying We are generating funds for the development of infrastructure in third world or developing nations, so they can build out their infrastructure to recover more plastics, buy machinery, hire more people, increase the wages of the people, open up new geographical areas. And how can we do this as human beings? We need AI. That's why Google invested in us to be able to provide us with the necessary support to develop AI fraud detection on the invoices that are being put on the blockchain. And for us, AI is an amplification tool of our commitment to recovering plastic across the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, then the main role of AI in your business is the data, managing the data. Okay.
Correct.
Ricardo, and what about you? You're making a fantastic work on researching this in an area that's very important for the waste, for the food waste, and so on. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, at Asset Flow, we are working with artificial intelligence and focused in human behavior. So we have to develop a new type of artificial intelligence that we call behavioral AI that is able to understand human behavior with small sets of data so it can create models to predict what's going to happen in the future. So we work today with more than 15 brands, 6 retail groups, and they are using our models to predict what the shoppers will consume over the next months. And with that, they can predict with way more accuracy, 99% accuracy, what's going to be the demand for different products. And with that, reduce food waste. Because food waste is one of the most, the biggest problem in retail. It's $1.75 trillion. And the main reason for that is mostly technological. It's very difficult to predict the future. And creating this type of models that allows them to really understand the human behavior and the change in human behavior, they can predict that, they can predict the demand, and they can reduce food waste with that.
Yeah, we can go on about consumer behavior on AI, but I will pass to Greg. Greg, tell us a bit about you.
Sure, thank you. Again, as Andre pointed out, great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Great thing to have you all here to participate in this conversation. So I work at Farfetch as a senior principal engineer. I primarily work in an area that is both involved with our global practice of experimentation, which is how we establish practices and provide tools that can be used across we're in 19 countries as a business right now. I'm based in Portugal in the last 5 years. And we help people have these tools to ask questions, wire things up with data, and be able to answer questions about their products, services, markets, et cetera. We use AI in a lot of applications, things like fraud detection, for example. Other things like we do our own sort of chatbot work, been doing that for years. We do things like estimated delivery dates. We do all sorts of projections and predictions of market demands. And this also fits in a bigger story, which my prior role was VP of Engineering at Singularity University and their headquarters in Silicon Valley, where I was exposed to a lot of exponential technologies, AI being one of them. And in the last decade for me, I think my own perspective has kind of shifted on the importance of systemic problem solving. And we've gotten really good in sort of our enlightenment knowledge of being able to take things in isolation and put them in a test tube and say, this is what we learned from that. But then when we combine it all back together, it doesn't always quite work the way we plan. And those are really the dominant problems of our, I think, societal in our time, whether it's things like, obviously, climate or sustainability. Sustainability being it is a systemic property. It is not something we can solve individually. Or even take a look at things like social media or governance, et cetera. These are all sort of the problems of our era. And so by having data collection and being able to make change to a system, you can better understand how to make impact, because whenever there's these complex systems, your actions usually result in something that's often something positive, but also potentially something negative. And so you have to have eyes for that. How do you manage these situations, particularly as they scale? So that's really been sort of my kind of passion in terms of my professional engagements and being able to look at it. And AI obviously poses a lot of both pros and cons in that regard.
Yeah, we are speaking a lot about consumer behavior, okay? And the general of the people say, which kind of consumer behavior? Do we have the bad consumer behavior and the good consumer behavior on AI? Okay? Which data are we using for AI? Okay, which leads our consumer behavior when we are speaking about food waste, or when we are speaking about to try to make the best for the plastics and to invoices and so on, and to buy products in Farfetch. Do you want to say something about this?
Well, from our perspective, it's somewhat straightforward because we are working in 17 different countries, and essentially the core tool of the recovery of plastic waste is the invoice. So we need to have a deep understanding, very simple, straightforward, but deep understanding of the accounting regulation in those countries to be able to verify that the invoices are legitimate and to be able to basically audit that the monies are being paid towards those invoices. It's all very mechanical, if you wish, and this is a perfect target for amplifying the verification activity of an auditor. So AI, in this sense, really empowers the ability of verification across 17 different accounting and legal jurisdictions to validate the invoice. So for us, it is an enabler of our verification process.
And you don't have any afraid of manipulating that data?
No, we do not, from the following reason. We are a blockchain-based platform, and all the companies that work with us, as we all know, blockchain is immutable. It's obviously transparent. So you have an enormous reputational risk if you're a recovery company or a recycler and you're putting false information on the blockchain. You are associated with that false information forever. Double accounting, fraudulent invoices, etc. You will really have serious damage to your business. So this is, although it may not seem scientific, it is a strong deterrent to doing the wrong thing. And then obviously AI helps you determine if there's a double accounting for the amount of tons that have been recovered and sold, so that the same ton of polypropylene, for example, cannot be sold twice. All of these are really very scientific approach, but black and white towards solving the problem of tracking the recovery of plastic. So for us, AI is definitely the core of this.
And just for you, Greg, you maybe with your AI, you study the behavior of your customers to know what they want to buy.
Correct.
And the best things that your specific target wants to buy it. Can we say that you can manipulate your target, your public, your consumers?
There's always that possibility, correct? And not to say that the thing is personally, I come in with systemic effect because I feel like there's a lot of, we know sort of the legacy of doing things for short-term gains that actually results in long-term loss of customers and a lot of churn. And as typically happens, usually I think the statistic is you pay about 6 or 7 times customer acquisition costs as you do to retain a customer. So better to keep them happy, right? And so that means also recognizing customers are coming on a journey. Maybe they're looking to purchase something. I think that's obviously the gold mine. It's one of the easier problems to solve. The other problem is that there's a lot of people who are just curious about fashion, right? And so how do you essentially approach them to make sure that you're a place that they think of when they want to explore different designers, different styles, et cetera, but you're not hitting them up every 20 minutes with, hey, if you get an extra like free shipping or whatever to kind of keep trying to make it about sales. So you contextually have to think about what their needs are, because as we know, sort of the customer buying cycle is everything from awareness to recognition and discerning different sort of products and purchase decisions. And so being able to tailor what people are for where they are is the most important part, and that includes messaging, includes sort of the content you maybe want to share. So there's a lot of importance in kind of having a higher goal, which is a much fuzzier one than saying, oh, how much revenue we made today. You kind of want to lead with happier customers usually make you a more viable business, right? And then how do you make it so that it's profitable for you and work with that?
Yeah, great. And Ricardo, you are dealing with the consumer in terms of waste, retail, and so on. A lot of people is working on the retail and the consumer behavior on the retail to use the best way to reach them for their targets. But you're much worried on the sustainable part. Okay? Do you notice that is different from region to region, from people to people, for different segments of population? How AI can reduce these differences?
Yeah, definitely in Portugal, we are in a fourth place in food waste per capita. Fourth place in European Union. So Portugal is for some reason, it's I don't know why, we waste a lot in terms of supermarkets. And this problem is fundamentally technological, right? So you talk about manipulation of the thing that in supermarket, that's where we see more manipulation. And sometimes the manipulation goes completely out of control. When a brand, in Portugal, it's very common that 80% of the time, all the products are in promotions. The strategy in Portugal, in supermarkets, is always to get the lowest price. And because of these promotions, always fighting against the competitors for the best price, it creates unsustainable demand for the products. And sometimes it is very difficult to predict this high demand for different products because of these changes in prices very often. And that leads to food waste. And it's very interesting to see, like, there is a lot of studies that show that people in supermarkets, especially in supermarkets, also in clothes stores, we are in a state of trust. We are very manipulated by our emotions, the taste, the touch, the smell. And it's very, very easy to manipulate people inside the supermarket to consume more, to buy more. And supermarkets do a lot of strategies to do that. And a very interesting study that we did with one of our customers in Italy, they hire a company to follow shoppers inside the store to get all the paths and the interactions with the products. And Asset Flow only analyzed the sales information and the layout of the store to reconstruct all the paths that people did inside the store. So without looking at the people, comparing both results, we're able to predict how people actually move inside the store, interact with the products without seeing those people. So basically, we kind of have the same behavior at scale when we are in front of the same stimulus. So that's what we are working on. If we get what stimulates people to do something, we can predict better. So we are solving the problem, understanding the behavior to solve this issue of food waste.
Then you are working in Portugal. We are one of the worst countries in that.
Yeah.
And you are predicting the public, then we will go worse. Because the supermarkets can predict better, and we are going worse in that case.
Well, in our case, what we want is Portuguese can consume even more and more. That's how the evolution is going. We have more and more people in the world, right? Depending on the country. But if we can predict better what's going to be the demands, they can better optimize the production. So it's always to optimize the full supply chain, not just what is going to sell, but also what's going to produce. That also creates a lot of waste.
Yeah, yeah. And in that case, you can work with Andre, okay, because of the plastics, and you tell to the supermarkets, please work with Andre because of the plastics and the invoices and so on. Okay, one of the questions that the public is always about AI, and you are the best persons to answer to that, is, are we going to a crisis because of AI? Okay, less security, much more consumption and driven consumption and manipulated consumption, and people buying clothes that they don't want, people, I don't know, in the plastics, but throwing a lot of plastics to the sea and so on. And because of AI, we will be much more manipulated and much more dangerous. And what do you think about that? Can we begin with you, Andre?
Well, João, from our perspective, we have a very operational / tactical, functional response to that question. We're all familiar with credit card usage and the AI-driven fraud detection systems that they normally cut your credit card if there's an increase in spending habit in a short amount of time or some sort of abnormal activity. That obviously is a very simple application. From our perspective, it's at a world level ensuring that there is no double counting in the plastics being recovered, driven by the incentive for transparency. Because ultimately, for the last 50 years, the waste management industry had only been making money by collecting the waste, sorting it, and selling it. And now they can sell the data, i.e. they're being paid to show that they're transparent. So the good side is definitely we have now transparency being created in an industry that had not been transparent for the last 50 years. The opposite side is obviously there's an economic incentive to try to gamify the system and make more money. So AI is the perfect tool precisely to avoid double counting of the waste that's being recovered and sold into the industry. So from our vision in terms of the plastic recovery industry, AI is the ideal tool. We do not see any negative future in this specific activity.
And in general?
In general, it's a bigger concern, obviously, because we do see an increase in reliance on ChatGPT, for example, right? And so the human being eventually truly becomes what I was saying at the beginning, where in reality, it's reality. We either consume voluntarily or involuntarily. We all need to eat, but we don't all need to have 100 pieces of clothing, right? But we do both. And then eventually, if AI is thinking for us, ultimately, where does that leave us in our initial skill of innovation, in that initial skill of being able to advance technology, because we're relying on artificial intelligence. So it becomes, the masses obviously by that become more easily manipulated. The masses can become, they become dumber eventually. So if you realize that AI is an amplification tool for specific activity, very good. If you rely on it for your everything, the risk is that eventually we are really literally just consuming machines, and we don't produce. That's personal.
Yeah. Ricardo, what is the vision of a researcher about this?
Yeah, it's a complicated question because AI is basically is not solving problems of nature, right? It's solving problems created by humans. So that's where the danger lies, right? AI is a capitalism tool like any other that we use. We want to make our companies more productive, and we use AI for that. And sometimes we are going to replace humans by AI. But in the end, we have AI only learns with the data that already existed. So it is not a smart tool. It is an average tool. It can provide answers that any other, for example, ChatGPT creates answers that were designed by other people on average. It does not create innovation. We cannot rely on ChatGPT ever for innovation. We cannot rely on them to have feelings by us. We cannot love a robot to love us back, right? So the danger really relies here on how people are going to use that with the only intention to damage the others. So the danger is on people, not on AI. We need to trust humans on this for the future.
And about you, Greg?
I'd like to add, like what Ricardo said, I was nodding my head a lot there, just because I think these are, anytime there's like a big disruptive technology, it can be scary times. And for good and for not so good. And so a lot of people are rightfully questioning sort of what's our role as humans. Are we going to give away our agency to machines? Do we trust what's in them, et cetera? There are some things that give me hope because there's a lot of averages. I still feel like even whether it's the creative industries like music and or fashion and designers, et cetera, that their AI is a great tool to bring people up to the average very quickly, amazingly so, that you can become sort of a baseline, maybe not experts. You're not necessarily leading in your field, and to what you said, it's not really so much a tool for innovation per se. So, and that's because essentially the nature of AI being that it feeds on data. And so if data doesn't exist, it's blind. And so what's the future? Well, if the future is like the past, then we have data. But when the future isn't like the past, which innovation tries to lead us into, then it's not really as helpful. So when it comes to being able to, like, you know, I was using the example as we were talking behind the stage of in COVID, and there's a lot of human patterns in how we purchase things that can be cyclical, whether it's fashion, whether it's certain times of year, but there was nobody who would have told us that the world would have gone crazy to buy toilet paper as soon as the COVID pandemic was announced, because we had no data for it. And no AI could tell us that because we had no precedents. And the more that we do these sort of innovative things, and the other thing which is great too is AI has been proven to not actually be effective at the issue of causality. Causality meaning that if we take a certain action of agency, that something might happen as a result. I'm very much into the experimentation because from a systemic way, causality is very indirect as opposed to our used to being direct, like hit a hammer and this makes a noise. It's very much like you create a displacement in the system and the system responds, and then you have to see what the data says that comes back about, do you want more of this or do you want less of that, and how are you managing that? So there's a very strong role for humans in there because of the dependence on data. I don't like the term data-driven, for example, because to me that's just autopilot. And I like data-informed, and others have different sort of, data-led and et cetera. But I like data-informed because it says that there's a human in the loop to really interpret it, because data will tell us what's happening, but it won't tell us why. And we are always asking why, and we're trying to make that causality connection between what led to this in hindsight or whatever. And for at least foreseeable future, I see humans having a good role in that.
Yeah. Another subject that is worrying the AI world in this moment is about regulating. Okay? Europe is getting a lot of concerns about regulating everything that concerns AI. I know States is doing the same, and the thing is the lawyers are very worried about it and saying that we need to do it as fast as possible, and the scientists are saying you want to regulate too much because we have to advance, and the regulation is obviously against it and against the speed of regulation. Can you tell us something about this, Ricardo?
Yeah, that's a great facade. Like, you have these big companies, Google, OpenAI, they create these let's say, monster, like ChatGPT, in a good way. I think ChatGPT is great. I use it every day. They create this monster, and then they said, hey, let's regulate now. The reason why they do that is to avoid the competition to get to the level that they get, right? OpenAI use data that now with regulation other companies cannot use. So that's a good strategy. And well, again, when I used ChatGPT in the beginning, I was able to ask anything to the chat and get interesting answers. But now, because of these new restrictions, these new filtering, the ChatGPT looks very dumb. Like it gives me very stupid answers, and sometimes they block the answers because of these new filters. And that's a problem of tech evolution, right? When people start doing bad things with that, they need to put restrictions that affect everyone. And the regulations as well, it creates this block in which only specific people will have access and the others will not. So again, the problem lies in creating regulations to the tools instead of finding what is the real problem, which is on people. People should be regulated in a different way, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not the tools itself, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody is saying that ChatGPT is not AI. It's a little part of AI, and we must discuss a lot about the other things of AI. Greg, and about the things that a lot of people fear. We are losing a lot of jobs. We will have a lot of people unemployed because of AI. What's your vision about it?
Going back to your previous question about regulation, and this is how I'll apply to this question, is one of the things I am encouraged about this with regulation is it shows a greater awareness of the need for regulation. I think we've seen sort of the social, for both bad and good, have gotten a bit burned with things like social media and how it's distributed and created some impacts, and realized that without any regulation, this is something that just can't be completely hands-off. Personally, I'd like to advocate some kind of agile form of regulation, because we're not going to have perfect knowledge from the beginning. But when it comes back to sort of the question of, just to make sure, I think I almost lost my track. To make sure I'm specifically on your question, could you repeat that?
About the jobs.
About the jobs. So the thing with jobs is, this is a historical truth that human history is all about new technologies we've invented and the changing of dynamics, et cetera. Why I wanted to bring regulation is in the awareness of whether it's a partnership between industry and governance and civics and charitable organizations looking at, we're going to need a lot of reskilling. We're going to need people who probably are doing jobs now that will become easier, but maybe that their time could be better invested in somewhere else. There's going to be some people who are going to be like, I'm not really interested in that change. I really want to do what I do. So we're not going to be able to catch everyone. But I feel like there needs to be a recognition of that it shouldn't be left to the worker just themselves to figure out, how am I supposed to transition in a total economic revolution of what's going to happen in terms of jobs being redefined. Now, a lot of our jobs aren't going to be redefined. I think there's a lot of hot air about AI changing everything, but there's still fundamental basics. We need everything from childcare to being able to do nursing to whatever that are still have a very heavy human touch and have remained sort of not only somewhat productive careers, but are ones that we probably don't want to be the first things that we try to automate. I mean, people will try,
Yeah.
But the people in Silicon Valley will say, we'll probably end up creating much more jobs than we have today because we'll demand, because usually it happens, and there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
I tend to feel like it's good. There's always it's a disruption point in society.
Yeah.
It creates new winners and new losers. And that creates challenges for anybody who's trying to make a living in this world. So we have to find ways to encourage people who might be left out of some of the decisions to be able to be brought back in. And for those who can kind of run ahead with the new world that we're going to have, we want to make sure that they feel part of a common society and not living off in their ivory towers in their own sort of self-countries that have no taxes and regulations.
Okay.
That's where I stand.
Thank you. We are running out of time, but I have a challenge for you, okay? As each of you, if you can point the biggest threat and the biggest opportunity that AI, we have 8 minutes, then 2 minutes maximum for each one. The biggest threat and the biggest opportunity with AI for you. We can begin by you.
Thank you as well. So from again, very laser focused on sustainability and plastic recovery, the biggest opportunity for AI is to imagine these 350 million metric tons of plastic that I talked about is being produced every year, and only 9% is being recycled. Well, imagining a world where you know where it's going, where it's coming from. That's the biggest opportunity of AI. Everything is tracked, and you know that you can protect the environment. The biggest threat in a general perspective is I do think that society is going to be extremely challenged. There will be enormous disruption for most people that have jobs that are not based on the services sector, and that even the mere concept of universal income, basic universal income, is going to become more mainstream because something has to be done to be able to provide a living for those that cannot adapt to this enormous tsunami of change. And if we don't govern that and do that properly, then we're going to have a societal disruption. That's what I think.
Thank you. And you, and you, Ricardo?
Yeah, for me, the biggest threat is definitely the human touch that we are losing. We more and more now only communicate with machines, and we are going that direction. Everything is being automated, and that creates that's the main cause of depression. Today we only look at social media. Now imagine in a world that we also communicate with social media and communicate us back. And the biggest opportunity is the learning curve. If I had all these technologies like ChatGPT when I was in high school, I probably will do a different path and probably faster than what I'm doing today. So, yeah.
Great, great. And for you, Greg?
I'll see. The biggest threat I see is the fact that we end up sort of outsourcing our ethics to computation and machinery. Meaning that when we leave decisions out of human hands into everything from if somebody gets a loan for their home or whatever to be able to live in a certain neighborhood or whatever, that becomes sort of a deflective shield to say, well, you know, the algorithm said so, and we don't take ownership of that. And I feel like that is a really slippery slope that I feel is our biggest threat. And that's why I'm very human-centered in my thinking. In terms of the biggest benefit, I think AI is going to do a lot to democratize some baseline level of knowledge and skills that sometimes would take normally a lifetime to achieve in a lot of different fields, and whether that could be people who have assistants who were always felt like, hey, somebody's asked me to program some website, but then, you know, the next thing you know, within a week, they already got something, and like, I would have never done this without AI. I think there's a lot of examples like that are possible to at least get at a medium level of competency of what is publicly known in an assistive way that otherwise wasn't as achievable at scale.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that was a nice encounter. Then I must make a disclaimer. I'm not optimistic about AI, and I think AI is almost just a trend because AI is a normal evolution of technology, and we have to face it. I really, and I agree with you all. I really agree that excessive regulation causes bureaucracy, and we cannot fall in that thing. But yes, we must have independent regulators for this business. And yes, for me too. And let me express my opinion. Okay, I think we will have a lot of more and different jobs, and of course with some traits that with technology we will solve it too, and with the evolution of society. And thank you very much for your presence. Thank you for being here with us, and I hope you like it, this conversation. Thank you very much.